Good morning and welcome, as always, to Penn Vicarage. It's Wednesday and I hope you're cheerful, I hope you are well, I hope you're looking forward to a lovely day. Now, as I'm sure you know by now, I love the Bible. It's one of the things I love most about being a Christian. I just love getting into scriptures. Always have done and always will do. But I think we have to be honest that sometimes the Bible is hard. Sometimes the Bible has what someone called once text of terror. Or, as I might say, sometimes the Bible throws us a curveball, which is just difficult to understand. There's quite a few of them in there, actually. And this morning's is one of the most well-known, I think. It's the famous parable of the dishonest steward. Now, as I say, it's difficult to understand, but I'm going to try and give it my best shot this morning. The context is that Jesus has been ministering up the north, and he's just about to set off for Jerusalem for the final showdown, the cross and the resurrection. That's the kind of context in Jesus' life. But it's Luke 16, verses 1 to 9. Now, please, especially this morning, so you're going to get this one, you've got to turn your brains up to number 11, put your thinking caps on, maybe put your cups of tea down for a minute. Here goes, I'm going to give it my best shot. Luke 16, verses 1 to 9. I'll read you the reading first. Then Jesus said to the disciples, "There was a rich man who had a manager, and charges were brought to him that this man was squandering his property. So he summoned him and said to him, 'What's this I hear about you? Give me an accounting for your management, because you cannot be my manager any longer.' Then the manager said to himself, 'What will I do now that my master's taking my position away from me? I'm not strong enough to dig, and I'm ashamed to beg. I've decided what to do so that when I'm dismissed as manager, people may welcome me into their homes.' So, summoning his master's debtors one by one, he asked the first, 'How much do you owe my master?' He answered, 100 jugs of olive oil. He said to him, 'Take your bill, sit down quickly, and make it 50. Then he asked another, 'How much do you owe?' He replied, 100 containers of wheat. He said to him, 'Take your bill and make it 80. And his master commended the dishonest manager because he'd acted shrewdly. For the children of this age are more shrewd in dealing with their own generation than are the children of light. And I tell you, make friends for your souls by means of dishonest wealth, so when it's gone, they may welcome you into the eternal homes.'" This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Now, friends, there is a fairly major moral problem with this morning's reading. On the face of it, you see, Jesus is commending dishonest behaviour. This chap, he finds himself in trouble. He's in debt. He cuts dirty deals with debtors to try and curry favour for himself with somebody else's money. And on the face of it, it looks like the master and therefore Jesus are commending this manager for dishonest behaviour. Jesus is supposed to be sinless, and I have a bit of a moral problem with that. The idea that Jesus might commend dishonest behaviour doesn't really cut. So there's a huge, whopping great moral issue with this morning's reading. But let's see if we can make some sense of it. Now, various things that we can try and do. The first solution would be, let's duck it. Let's pretend it's not there. It's only in Luke's Gospel. We can skip over it, pretend it's not there. The trouble is, though, to me, that just won't do. Christians often do that, but I just don't think it's right. The fact is, Jesus, as far as I'm aware, said it, and if Jesus said it, you can't just ignore it like that. It's in the Bible in black and white. It may be only in Luke's Gospel, but it is in Luke's Gospel, so I don't think you can really do that. I don't think that really cuts it. If you're going to be honest, you have to take the whole of the Scriptures. So I think duck it won't do. The second solution, and it's quite clever, this one, is what I call the pedantic, legalistic, nitpicking solution, which goes like this. In those days, charging interest, or usury as it was known, was forbidden by the Bible. And what the nitpicking theory goes is that what the rich man had been doing is charging interest when he wasn't supposed to be. So when the manager cut the deal with these other people, what he was basically doing is charging what had originally been lent with the interest taken off. Nice try. Good attempt, but I think that won't really do. Firstly, because the interest rate is variable from one person to the next. And also, I think it also makes it a very, very boring story. And there are a whole load of assumptions in there to make that work that I think makes that massively improbable. So I would say to people that came up with that one, Nice try, good attempt, but again, I think it just doesn't cut it. I think to really get this one, what we have to do is have a completely different mindset about possessions. I think if you really want to get it, I think we have to remember this. This is not our world, this is God's world. And actually, if you get that on board, it makes it make somewhat more sense. This is not our world, this is God's world. God created it, God sustains it, and this is God's world. And that, as far as we're concerned, we brought nothing into the world and we take nothing out. We brought nothing into the world when we were born and we take nothing out of the world when we go. And this is God's world, and what we have between here and here is God's gift to us. In the same way, it wasn't the manager's money, it was the rich man's money. Similarly, between our birth and our death, everything we have comes from God. With me so far? And also, because in the same way we brought nothing into the world, we take nothing out, and everything you have between here and here is gift from God. We can never repay God for all the many blessings that God's given us. Not to mention the fact, all the sins that we, if we're honest with ourselves, commit between here and here. There's no way we can ever repay God what God has given us. In the same way, the dishonest manager was not able to repay the rich man. We, similarly, are never able to pay back everything that God's given us. So to understand this, you've got to get that what we brought nothing into the world and we take nothing out. Everything we have between here and here is actually God's gift to us. And like the dishonest steward, we can never pay back God for all the many good things that God has given us. So it's all a gift, and we can never pay it back, even if we tried. Given, therefore, that it's all gift and we can't pay it back, what we can do with what God has given us between here and here is use it shrewdly. Use it for the build-up of God's kingdom. Use it to make friends on earth, to build up the church of God, so that many, many more people will be our friends, and that many, many more people will join us in heaven when we get there. So given that, as I say, everything we have is gift, and given that we can never pay God back anyway, like we are then have a responsibility as stewards of God's gifts to use them wisely and shrewdly. To be generous with people for the build-up of the good of the world, to be generous for the build-up of God's kingdom, to use the money and the resources that God's given us, as I say, to preach the gospel, to do good, and to build up the kingdom of God in this world. And that, I think, is what this story is really about. It's about everything we have is gift. We can never repay God fully, however hard we try. What we can do is use what he has given us in the meantime, make friends, build up God's kingdom, and preach the gospel. That's what I think it's about. That's my crack at it. Hope that makes sense. If you've got any comments, make them underneath. Do please share this with